Right, well, it's 3 minutes past, so I think we should get going. So thank you all so much for joining today's webinar on how to navigate the cost of living crisis and come out on top. My name is Ruth. Lucy, if you could just pop yourself on mute, that would be wonderful. Thank you. And we also have Dilys with us, who is our client account exec, so you may be hearing from Dilys as well. And obviously Stacey, who's joining us from Claro, who'll be running the majority of the session. Before we start, just for those of you who've not met us and don't know much about Elevate, as I said, I'm Ruth and Lucy, we're the co-founders, and we really would love to share with you a very short video just to give you a little bit more background about who we are and the team of brilliant experts that we work with. Well, don't think we have any sound.
Supportive, fun, transparent.
Oh, sit together.
Could you start from the beginning, Stacey? Sorry, there was no sound. There we go.
3 words I would use to describe Elevate are heart-centered, innovative, supportive, fun, transparent.
Got that shit together.
At Elevate, we have a no fads, no jargon, no judgment approach to well-being. We don't believe in quick fixes, tick boxes, or a one-size-fits-all solution. And we believe that optimal well-being should be accessible, fun, and achievable for everyone.
We find the world's leading wellbeing experts and work with them to create tailored, practical, evidence-based solutions for your employees. We have experts in
anxiety,
Mental health, suicide prevention,
musculoskeletal health, sleep,
neurodiversity,
men's mental health,
nutrition and intuitive eating, women's health,
stress management and burnout,
creative well-being, behaviour change.
We work with you to make long-lasting, impactful change to the health of individuals
and tailor our offerings to meet the needs of your organisation.
Ultimately, a healthy workforce
is a happy, productive workforce.
Thanks, Stacey. I hope the noise levels are okay there. Anyway, so we are here today to talk about this cost of living crisis that we have found ourselves in. I was sharing with Ruth this morning that our energy bill for last month came through and it was £365 for the whole of January, and last year it was £85. So all of us are really experiencing this pinch, and these are incredibly challenging times for us as individuals, but also for our employees. And Claro have carried out some national research and found that 50% of employees, so half of the workforce, are worried about their financial situation. And as a result, almost a fifth of them are considering leaving their jobs if the cost of living crisis worsens in the next 12 months. So, it's really important that we are offering solutions and support to our employees. And that's why we are really excited to have partnered with Claro, who are a financial well-being company. They offer coaching and they offer sessions like you're going to experience today. So we've invited them along, and I'm going to pass over to the lovely Stacey to deliver the rest of this session. Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks, Lucy. So hi everyone, it's so lovely to be here and to be partnering with Elevate. If you haven't heard of Claro before, we deliver financial well-being into the workplace, and we do that through a combination of our digital platform, which has budgeting tools, on-demand courses and content and videos, as well as our learning management system, which is courses on numerous different areas of people's finances that they can complete on their own in their own time. And we also have our human service, so the one-to-one financial coaching with expert financial coaches, and webinars and workshops like this one today. A little bit about me, very briefly. I have 14 years experience in investment banking and asset management and fintech. And I gave up the big paycheck with lots of awareness around my own financial well-being in 2018 to be a self-employed financial coach with a focus on well-being, values-based money management, so green money and managing your money aligned with your own values. And then Claro thankfully found me at the start of 2021 when I joined them as a financial coach. So I've worked with various organizations and individual employees across lots of different industries and sectors, but have myself very much been on a financial journey. My salary has not been a straightforward trajectory. My financial well-being one hasn't either. So hopefully I've incorporated Claro's expertise and my own experience into our sessions. So financial well-being in the workplace. Before we got on to the cost of living topic, I wanted to share some ways that Claro talks to organizations about what they can do, what the employer's role can be in supporting your employees' financial well-being, particularly at such a challenging time like through a cost of living crisis. So we talk about the 3 pillars of getting the foundations right first. So that's listening to your employees, reviewing what you already have, and creating a workplace environment that really destigmatizes these money conversations. And all 3 of these are an ongoing process. It's about consistently showing up for your employees to have these types of conversations. So it's understanding what your employees want and need at the start. So, it's easy to reach for programs and new fancy tech solutions without really first asking and listening to what the problems are your employees are facing financially. So really understanding these is essential to, choosing and delivering like the relevant and targeted help and support that they really need. And I've listed some ways that you might do that on the slide there. So data collection through anonymous questionnaires or surveys. If there's any other kind of feedback processes that you have from employees already in the organization, can you incorporate some financial well-being questions into those? Claro has a template for some of those questionnaires that we freely share with any organization who perhaps haven't asked those questions to their employees before. Collecting stories. So, we all know the power of individual stories. Do your leaders have any stories of when they've been through kind of financial changes or challenges in their life and how they've overcome them, or anyone from any level of the organization? We want to encourage peer learning. So many of us, default say, we're bad with money, or we're not very good with money, but actually all of us do have good financial behaviors, do have lessons that we've learned, are good with money in lots of ways. So how can we bring out that confidence and encourage some of that sharing with each other? And focus groups. So the cost of living crisis is, it's something that we're all going through together through various degrees. And in a way, it has been a catalyst to some of us talking about our money stresses more. So this could be an opportune moment to get a group of employees together that are, willing to talk about the challenges they're facing and have that open conversation. So however you collect that qualitative or quantitative data, you really use those findings to inform the solution that you want to implement. But most of us aren't starting from, a clean sheet of paper. So it's also about reviewing what you already have. So share what benefits you already have available. Gather feedback on how those benefits have been received. Do people know how to access them, how to use them, how to make the most of them? And analyze the uptake of the benefits that you already have. And it's about, renewing them, repositioning them, recommunicating them through a financial well-being lens, and also identifying any gaps that you might need to fill. And let's remember that, talking about money in the workplace is still, new and taboo for both the employee and the employer. So for this information gathering process to be truly valuable, it's about, recognizing the very personal nature of the topic. And perhaps that's working with external providers who can anonymize individual information and data for employees who might not feel comfortable sharing things with employers. It's also about businesses role modeling transparency themselves. So has the business shared how it's been affected by the cost of living crisis, or publishing the gender pay gap and having conversations with employees around that. Another approach might be to look at other initiatives you have in the wellbeing space, mental wellbeing, physical wellbeing, all of those kind of services that Elevate have just spoken about in the video. What has worked in those areas when they were previous taboos in the workplace, and what lessons can you take, or how can you kind of combine or add financial wellbeing to some of those initiatives and campaigns? So once you kind of have collected that data and you have an understanding of some of the needs and wants of your employees' financial well-being, you can then choose a solution that's really based on their specific needs. Now, there's been so much evolution because of this huge, very quick increase in demand for financial well-being in the workplace. Thankfully, we've seen lots of innovation from Claro and other providers out there to really kind of bring forward what financial well-being looks like in the workplace. So on this slide here, I've mapped out kind of that evolution. And typically we've had financial products on offer. So the workplace pension being a core part of that, offering financial loans, kind of travel benefits, healthcare insurance and protection in our contracts, savings and investments products sometimes, and childcare support. That's kind of typically or traditionally what people thought of as financial well-being in the workplace. Now we've seen this kind of explosion of different solutions on the market. So through the cost of living crisis, organisations that could afford to have offered gestures of goodwill. We've got lots of earned wage access platforms out there now, salary exchange for certain benefits like pension contributions, crisis support through our EAPs, and lots of other ones. The ones in red there are the ones that I've listed that Claro offers. So a wellbeing platform, either a general wellbeing platform that has a financial wellbeing expertise on that, or specific financial wellbeing platforms, rewards and discounts that can support people with, making a real difference to their monthly spending during the cost of living. Do people know what retailers are available on there? Or having discounts through your client network. Signposting resources. So if there is kind of real need for targeted support, like debt crisis, for example, do you have somewhere in your intranet where employees can go? There's so much noise, especially with like the growth of influencers on social media, for example, and everybody talking about the cost of living crisis. It can be analysis paralysis and your employees not knowing where to go. As the employer, you can position yourself as, offering credible resources and being a place of trust to find expertise and relevant support, and websites that are out there, freely available out there for your employees to access support they might need. Benefits, for example, or through the cost of living crisis, the UK government have launched various things to support us through this, like the energy bill support, for example. Can you put links to those sorts of websites and areas of support on your intranet, and various other things? And thankfully, what employers are also kind of recognizing and acknowledging is, because of the personal nature of the topic, like the want for employees just to talk to another individual about the financial stress that they're going through. So that's why we're seeing, financial coaching launching in this space, webinars like a taster of what you're going to get after this, and various other access to expert advice. One of the things you might not be familiar with before you saw this slide was financial first aiders. So mental health first aiders have been around in the workplace, thankfully, for a while now, and it's a concept that people are familiar with. What Claro has done is designed a 2-day course that your employees can attend to become financial first aiders. So they are, a confidential, trusted peer who can recognize the signs of money stress. We provide them with, the ability to signpost resources for different money challenges. So it's someone in the organization that a colleague can go to for financial support. So there's so much happening in this space, which is really, really great. And there's lots to choose from, but it's first understanding which areas your employees need, and then being able to pick and choose perhaps the solutions that are most suitable for them. Okay, so then Elevate asked me to give you a taster of what some of the content looks like that we deliver to employees. And one of the first sessions that we tend to do with new employers is, the very timely cost of living webinar. So I'm going to briefly go through some of the content that we deliver on the cost of living. So why we're in a cost of living, what does it mean for my borrowing, my spending, my saving and investing? And navigating kind of the crisis with some very practical tips for those 4 areas. The benefit being the kind of behaviors and tips that we put in place now to hopefully cut or reduce some of the increases in household bills and our food shopping and other areas of our spending are probably the same sort of behaviors and tips which will really help us capitalize on when the economy turns around. And then some tips on taking care of our financial well-being during such a difficult time. So why are we in a cost of living crisis? You could explain this in a very complex way, but taking it back to kind of basic economics, we saw a surge in demand for certain goods and services as the world came out of the COVID pandemic. At the same time of that, we've seen some huge factors impacting and reducing the supply of resources and products that we need and that we use. So the various implications around Brexit and exports and imports in and out of the UK through that, the climate crisis, natural disasters, extreme weather disrupting supply chains around the world, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the subsequent sanctions that happened as a result of that, the one most notable being, which we're really feeling the effects of now, is the energy crisis. And so the chart that's on there is this huge increase, very quick, rapid increase in inflation that we experienced and are still experiencing now. And lots of people ask us, how long will this cost of living crisis last? And the only guidance from the Bank of England at the moment is that they expect inflation to slow through 2023, falling to around 4% by the end of the year. But ultimately, none of us never really know. It's a global, multifaceted challenge. And, the trend of inflation going forward not only depends on those big, significant and still uncertain in many ways 5 factors on the slide there, but also, the unknown factors that we might not be aware of coming up in our future. And it's also important to remember that, lower inflation and seeing that percentage go down, unfortunately, doesn't mean that prices will fall. It just means that they will stop rising so quickly. I don't want to be all doom and gloom about it. It's meant to be an educational piece, but what is the message that we deliver to employees now is it's an opportune time for you to kind of get your financial health in order whilst there's such a focus on it. And all of the tips, kind of practical and behavioural, that you put in place will put you in a good position when the market does eventually turn around. So what does it mean for my borrowing, spending, saving and investing? For borrowing, ultimately, it means borrowing is more expensive. Borrowing money isn't cheap anymore. And variable interest, if you have any borrowing with variable interest, has likely increased. Hence why so many people are seeing their mortgages go up so rapidly. So things that people might consider: transferring any debts to 0%, and we have like a money saving expert, I think, linked to that, where you can freely check if you're eligible to switch to that. Building a repayment plan, so listing out all of the debts that you have, knowing what the interest rates are on those, paying at least the minimums, and if you can afford to overpay any of them, there's a debt repayment calculator there where you could put in all of the debts that you have, from loans, overdraft, credit cards, other, and the interest rates and minimums on each of those, and it will work out how most efficiently to attribute what you can afford across all of your debts, and gives you a debt-free date to track. Speak to a broker about your mortgage options. So importantly, you can do this up to 6 to 12 months before your mortgage is due for renewal. They are the best kind of expert to analyze your situation and give you options. So I won't go into details here because that's like a whole topic in itself. But one thing you do have control of is your credit score. So at least 6 to 12 months before you're getting a mortgage or it's up for renewal, look at your own personalized credit score, which you can freely get online, and see what you can do to improve your own credit score, because it might impact the interest that you're offered when you do come to change your mortgage. And being realistic, if you do need to use credit because of the cost of living crisis, or because that's how you choose to manage your money, still shop around and look at cards that you can perhaps switch to with rewards that you will use and will actually really benefit you. So what does it mean for my spending? As we're all feeling quite acutely, prices for different goods and services have increased, albeit at different rates. Energy bills and food, probably housing should be on there too, as the ones that we're really experiencing at the moment. So this is an opportune time to commit to a deep dive of your spending. I avoided putting the word budget on there, but really, even if it's just going line by line, if that's on a spreadsheet, back of an envelope, checking your balance on your banking app every day, it's looking at, where is my spending really going? And from a well-being perspective, what I've been encouraging people to do is not only note how much they're spending in each area, but what emotion is being triggered by that spending, perhaps at the time of the spend and maybe the following week or the following month. So we can really start to build that awareness around how do we feel about where our money is going. Identify categories where you can either make easy changes and build momentum. So if you think it's going to be, easy to switch to a certain different supermarket, for example, or, a different brand, and you can build up, celebrate the quick wins and build up from there. Or if you're somebody who, wants to see a big impact quickly, what levers are in your budget or your spending where you can move the needle quite quickly? So a big decision on where you live. During the pandemic, for example, I rented my house out and lived in my camper van, which hugely made a difference to me not having to pay my own mortgage for a while. I know those things aren't available to everybody, but it's about thinking really creatively. If I really had to make a huge change, what could I potentially do? Generating ideas for reducing spending in each category. This is a really nice place where employees can help each other. So I have examples where organizations have just created, a spreadsheet that's available to everybody, and they can share their own ideas. Like, hi guys, I've got a discount for, this food subscription box for the next couple of weeks, or I've just realized that I can cut my internet bill by this much, or this provider has just given me some really useful feedback on the phone I thought I would share. Whatever it is, helping each other through tips and tricks that they have for different spending categories, and maybe just choose a couple for the next month that you want to track and reduce. Those regular payments, the less frequent spends like insurance that are up for renewal, or like an annual bill that's due for renewal. Diarise, put a note in your diary a couple of weeks before that's due for renewal, so you have time to kind of research alternatives, to call your provider and see what better deals that you can get. Negotiate where possible, and maybe try rotating subscriptions. It's the most cliche tip that we get in personal finances, to cancel those subscriptions. Maybe just try, stopping one of them for a month, and then next month you'll switch them. All of these things are like one click now. So it allows us to kind of test things, see how our behaviors change, see like the impact that it has, and we can always reverse them. And utilize our workplace benefits. So as the employer, is it a good time to remind people that you have a discounts platform available, or remind people that you partner with a mortgage advisor and they can get free mortgage advice? Are people aware of the financial benefits that they can get through the workplace that is already available to them? What does it mean for my savings? So we have seen interest rates increase, but in reality that they won't keep pace with inflation. But that doesn't mean that we kind of, there are still things that we can do. So that's being realistic. And we all need readily available cash, particularly in uncertain times. So the first goal, which a coach tends to look at with a client, is do they have an emergency fund in place for those unexpected events? If there's another pandemic and someone's not eligible for furlough, or if their boiler breaks or their car breaks down, whatever it is, do they have a pot of money that can see them through those difficult times? And that needs to be in readily available cash. And do they have any goals with a 3-year time horizon or less? So anything people really want to achieve or really want to experience in the next few years, where it would be far too risky to invest for such a short time frame, have they put a savings plan in place for those goals? So it's really understanding what their savings goals are. And then it's about choosing accounts that are aligned to your needs, or what you really want to use that money for. One of those things is obviously generating interest on that money. So it's worth shopping around for the latest interest rates or sign-on bonuses that are available. But it's also other features that that bank can offer. So do you need the money within 1 or 2 days? So an easy access account. Can you put the money away for at least 1 or 2 years, and you might be offered a higher interest rate to do that? Have you created a budget where you can consistently put away £50, £100 a month, and a regular saver might reward you with a higher interest rate? Notice accounts where you need to give a certain day's amount of notice before you withdraw the money. Cash ISAs or roundups, especially in the cost of living when we feel like we can't afford to save. Roundups is a really cool tech feature where you can save without even kind of consciously having to do it. So if you're buying a coffee for £3.50 and the bank will round it up to £4 and put that 50p change into a savings account for you, it's about, you know, using the features that your bank offers. Talking about those roundups, one thing I also say is to keep the savings behavior, even in really difficult financial times. If you know, before the cost of living, summer last year, you were able to put away £300 a month, and you can no longer do that because your mortgage has gone up. Even if that savings behavior has to go down to £25, £50 a month, whatever it is, keep that transaction in place, keep that behavior in place. So when affordability allows, you've still got that momentum to just increase that number again. And ask your bank for help. So if you Google the bank that you're with, ways to save, most of them will have a page that summarizes all the tech features available, or the latest interest rates on certain accounts, bonuses, or, you know, features that they have for existing customers to help you to save. There might be a feature on there that you didn't know about. And for any savings that you're willing to put away, or you can afford to put away for, you know, 3 to 5 years or longer, then investing is obviously an option. One thing which Claro talks about with these spending and savings behaviours, and I know that Elevate like this concept and use this concept in other areas of their wellbeing offering as well, is this idea of friction in your system. So, you know, behaviourally, if there are spending behaviours that we want to minimise, it's about putting hurdles or friction in place to make us, you know, consciously question or consider that spending behaviour before we do it. And then with saving, if we want to save more, it's about making that behavior as easy as possible. So reducing any friction in the system. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of these, but we tend to generate lots of ideas of what adding friction might look like for people and what reducing friction might look like for people with savings, and get them to just pick 2 or 3 that they might want to try and put in place in their own system. And what does it mean for investing? Again, a huge topic in itself, but a lot of people have seen short-term volatility across their investments. But this is one place, investing, where over the long term, it tends to reduce inflationary risk. So it's one of the few places we can look to kind of mitigate inflationary risk and see our money perhaps grow by at least inflation or more over the long term. So at this kind of moment, a lot of feedback we get from employees or questions that we get from employees in the investment space at the moment, is now a good time to invest, because we have a lot of employees that haven't been investing before and they're interested in doing that. Or we've seen employees either stop their pension contributions or comment on their pension going down because they don't relate that to a general investments theme that is happening in lots of different spaces. So they can, unfairly perhaps criticize the workplace pension that they have in place, whereas actually, the performance of that isn't necessarily due to the provider or the fund that they're in. It's just kind of reflecting a wider trend. So we suggest to people that now, again, is an opportune time to review how much risk they're taking with their investments. And we often have to educate people in what we mean by that and what the diversification is within their portfolio. It's also a good time to read updates and commentary from investment providers. So if people do have, an ISA, or you have a pensions dashboard where people access their investments, there might be somewhere on there like a monthly fact sheet or a quarterly review that the investment provider publishes. And it might give people more kind of reassurance that actually their money is being managed by somebody, or there is a trustee involved, where their money is being kind of managed or responded to, or just kind of waiting to ride out a cost of living crisis. But it's just a nice reminder and perhaps an education opportunity if people can read the commentary that their providers are putting out at the moment. And then considering optimizing your workplace pension and optimizing tax efficiencies and government bonuses. So none of us can control our investment performance at the minute, but what we can control is making the most of workplace pension contributions and the tax relief that comes with that, and the employer contributions that come with that. That's effectively free money in a very difficult time. So if people have affordability to keep their workplace contributions and perhaps increase them if possible, that's a good time to do so. And just ensuring that any investments they have outside of their pensions are in tax efficient products like ISAs and LISAs, and we would obviously educate people about when to use those types of products. And then it's just in managing, the emotional roller coaster of investing through times like this, and consistently reminding people that, it's about time in the market, not timing the market. So that's a bit of an insight into the practical tips around actual money management in 4 key areas of our finances, but we always like to balance the practical out with the emotional and well-being side of our money. So here are 3 tips for taking care of your financial well-being, particularly in uncertain times. So the first one is setting smart goals relevant to your own financial well-being. So I use this quadrant to really define with people what financial well-being is. And ultimately, it's wanting to feel both secure and have freedom of choice, both in the present and in the future. So security in the present is having, control over your day-to-day, month-to-month finances, effectively not running out of money before your next paycheck. Feeling secure in the future, so being able to absorb a financial shock like a loss of income, or, like another cost of living crisis, or something happening in your life that you need to pay for quickly, and having reserves in place to be able to do that. And then freedom of choice. So it's really important that, we have space in our budget to take care of ourselves, or to, not feel like everything is a squeeze. And how can we find those choices that allow like the enjoyment of everyday life in our budgets today? And how can we work towards the lifestyle that we want in the future as well? So on track to kind of meet some of those savings and investment goals, be that being able to still afford a summer holiday next year, or being able to, work towards saving for your child's university fees in 10 years' time, whatever it might be. So at the minute, we encourage people to pick one of those quadrants which is the main source of their money stress? What's keeping them up at night? Is it security in the future? Is it freedom of choice in the present? Whatever it might be, pick one of those quadrants and then set a smart financial goal to help you make progress in that specific area. And then you can say to yourself, you know, so long as I'm kind of on track to meet this SMART goal, that's how I'm measuring and assessing my financial well-being at the moment. Making conscious money comparisons. So I really love this concept where a person believes he or she stands relative to others has a much larger effect on happiness than absolute income. So we live in, you know, a culture in the UK, it's different in other countries, but keeping up with the Joneses or, you know, comparing ourselves to others, that's perhaps not particularly helpful during such an uncertain financial time. So we encourage people to think about what comparisons they're making with money. Do they have a sibling rivalry with like a sibling who's in an industry that just, you know, attracts higher salaries? Or do they follow certain people on social media and they're thinking to themselves, how can you afford that? What comparisons do you make about money? And then asking yourself, is this helpful comparison? Is this inspiring me to be better with money? Is this educating me, that's giving me financial confidence to make better financial decisions? Or are they unhelpful comparisons? Are they just making me feel bad about myself, and perhaps they're benchmarks that aren't really realistic or fair anyway? So what comparisons you make, are they helpful or unhelpful? And is there perhaps a healthier comparison to make? Perhaps, you know, during the cost of living crisis, it's not a good time to think about how much you're able to save last year, or how much your salary or your employer could afford to increase your salary last year compared to this year. And instead, it's about, you know, if I can cut my food bill by 30% this much, that's a win. Or if I can negotiate one of my bills 50 quid lower, then that's a win. So being really conscious about the comparisons that you're making. And then thirdly, we always like to encourage people to commit to one conversation that they want to have in the next couple of weeks to support their financial well-being. And that might be a personal or a professional conversation. And I've listed some potential people or groups that they might want to commit to talking to, and reminding people that money conversations aren't always about negotiation. Or we don't always have to win a money conversation. We tend to only have money conversations when we really need to have them, because, you know, there's a pressing crisis that's happening, or we've reached a stage where we really need help. And they're very emotionally fueled conversations, or we feel like we need to sound like we know what we're talking about. Whereas actually we need to destigmatize talking about money and have these conversations regularly, or at times when actually we feel okay about money. So we can practice, you know, having those conversations, building that awareness, building that education. So when it comes to really needing to talk about money, we feel much better equipped to do so. And just being honest about the situation that you're in, so long as it's like a safe and confidential place, you feel comfortable sharing any information you want to. And reminding people that the cost of living crisis is one of these times when, you know, we're all employees, employers, providers, you know, individual households are feeling the squeeze to some degree. So there is lots of empathy out there at the moment. So thinking about one conversation that somebody wants to have, to learn something, to seek advice for something, just to feel supported by somebody, a conversation that they might want to have to feel better about their financial well-being. So there's loads more that I could have said, but hopefully that's been a really interesting taster into how we approach our financial well-being content, and maybe some practical tips that you can take through to your own organisation. But we have some time for questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, so yes, Ikra, I know that you had a question, and anybody else, if you have a question that you want to pop in the Q&A box or the chat box, then one of us can read it out for you, or as Ikra's done, just put your hand up and we can unmute you and you can ask yourself. Thank you, Stacey.
Firstly, thank you so much for the talk. It was really helpful. I wanted to ask you, I'm not a professional yet. I'm actually in my university. I'm in my last year, so I will be becoming a professional next year. So, there's going to be a lot of financial independency talk going on. What would be your suggestion to someone who's just, stepping into this world of how to manage your own money, how to manage your own income, and relating to the crisis? Because, as you know, it's like my generation feels kind of stumped because of the crisis. What would be your suggestion there? One thing that you would like us to keep in mind, maybe?
Sure. I mean, it's awesome that you're thinking about this already. Many of us actually learn how to manage our finances through making mistakes. So you're in a really great time to think about kind of how you want to manage your money. That financial well-being matrix might be a good place to start, and you can go through all 4 of them. So what does good look like for security in the present for me in the next 1-3 years? What does security in the future look like? How can I start building that emergency fund? And then I would say, from your first paycheck, really understand what's happening with your paycheck. Like, understand your employment contract, understand what benefits are available to you, the best way to kind of optimize your pension, how you're taxed, what else is coming out of your paycheck, to understand what you're actually going to receive in your bank account, and then build up your budget from there. So what are my needs? What are my wants, both now and in the future? And how much can I afford to save? And what goals do I want those savings to go towards? And do that in a way like through, tech or behaviors that work for you, and continue to kind of educate yourself. So identify kind of resources, networks, communities that you align with, and how they can support you with kind of building your financial knowledge as you go.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I know it's not exactly like my place to be here, but I just found I found the link on LinkedIn and I found it very interesting, so I just joined. But thank you so much.
That's so cool.
Welcome, Ikra.
Stacey, we just had a request from a participant for the financial first aider information. So just to say to everybody that we will be sending an email to all participants afterwards, just with more details about various bits and pieces. So look out for that. And if we don't have your email, then please just pop it in the chat or send it to Dilys, who's on the call. Thanks.
Awesome.
Any other questions? I had a question actually, Stacey, while people might be thinking of some. I was just wondering, as you were going through the session, thinking about kind of Gen Z and the way that people have saved over the years has definitely changed a lot. I talked to lots of my friends, and I'm not Gen Z quite, but people about saving, and we're talking about Bitcoin and crypto. Is that something that you are asked a lot more about now, and is that something that you advise on?
Yeah, so it's a topic that comes up a lot, like again with like some of the younger employees that we talk to. If I say, oh, and have you got any investments? A lot of them will go, well, I've got Bitcoin. We don't advise on any like savings or investments products which are like good or bad, but we talk through the pros and the cons. So if someone came to me with investments in Bitcoin and kind of no other savings or investments, I would be thinking, what's the appeal? Like, why are they investing in that? Is that because, they're really interested in the market and they have a high level of knowledge? Is it because they love tech? Is it because they're in financial difficulties and they're looking to make a, quick win? Whatever that might be, talk to them through that, and then educate them on like the pros and cons of that strategy and how they might want to consider, more what I would call core or like fundamental investment options and first. So it's really about kind of putting it into the bigger picture of who they are and what the rest of their finances look like, and then educating them on the pros and cons so they can make informed decisions themselves.
And also just something a question that I had, and I know that we had a brief conversation about this before the session, but I'm sure lots of the attendees are thinking about this, and it's increasing employee salary in line with inflation. We'll be doing that or not, and I know you said that this is kind of almost a whole separate webinar, but just in short, could you tell us your views on that?
Yeah, sure. So again, like when we work with employers or speaking kind of on behalf of employers to their employees, we like to give the balanced view, and then educate or reinforce with employees what their employer is or able to do in this space, and perhaps other ways that they can support them outside of salaries. So Claro, like definitely through our own research, we don't necessarily believe that salary increases are always the optimum solution for improving people's financial well-being, because, you know, in isolation, they don't address the underlying financial behaviors or difficulties. So sometimes it can just reinforce underlying financial behaviors. But appreciate, especially through the cost of living crisis, that salary increases or hardship funds or bonuses, whatever, can be life-changing for people. But there are, you know, there's reasons for and reasons against increasing salaries with inflation. So, you know, some people would say, of course, salaries should reflect the higher cost of living. You know, current inflation issues are caused by factors unrelated to pay levels, so it won't necessarily solve the inflation issue by not increasing wages. Like it might kind of delay or reduce the likelihood of recession if people are earning higher salaries. Hopefully they're still spending some of that, so kind of delaying recessions. And some people say increasing salaries kind of increases productivity because people are more motivated to work for a higher salary. But then there are, you know, equally understandable reasons against increasing salaries. So like I said, increasing salaries increases spending, increases inflation further. So would it potentially add to the problem? It doesn't. Increasing salaries doesn't solve those underlying financial well-being challenges, and people might still manage their money in a way that's detrimental to their well-being. And importantly, you know, employers are facing the cost of living crisis too. Our businesses are being impacted by the cost of living, so they might just not be in a position to increase salaries, and it might not be the best thing for the, you know, the longevity and ongoing concern of the company itself. And like I said, like the factors that are causing inflation aren't like really like the employer's problem to solve. You know, it's regulatory and policy solutions that are needed to resolve some of those issues. So there's, you know, there's no guarantee that increasing salaries will have a positive effect beyond the individuals. So what employers can do, I mean, if they're unable to increase salaries, just be really transparent with the kind of the process that you went through to make that decision, or the reasons underpinning that decision, and be transparent with your employees about how the cost of living has affected the business. Be clear about what's possible and what's not possible. So is there any direct financial support available? If not, what indirect support is available, like some of those benefits that we spoke about? And just reinforce how you are able to support your employees through this time. And still have those conversations with employees, still ask them, what is it that they're struggling with? You know, if the cost of living has, you know, impacted loads of mortgages, can they work with a mortgage advisor so people have someone that they can go and speak to? Is it that people are wanting to start investing? Can you just do a webinar or get an online course? What is it specifically that people are struggling with? If it's spending, do you have access to a discounts and rewards platform? Are there kind of discounts available through their workplace that they don't currently know about. You know, it's hard to have those conversations with employees when you feel like you're giving them a negative message or letting them down in some way, but it's probably better to still have them and perhaps hopefully identify ways you can help them than not have those conversations at all.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, really useful.
Great.
Any other questions?
Like we said, we can read them out anonymously if you want to send them directly to us as well.
I think that's it, Stacey, actually.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thanks so much for having me and everybody for
Thank
listening
you.
and reasonably seeing.
I've certainly written down a few tips for myself, so it's been really useful, and I'm sure everyone has found it equally as useful. So thank you again.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Thank
And
you so
as
much.
Lucy mentioned, she'll be sending around some more information. So yeah, keep an eye out and do get in touch directly to find out any more about running any sessions in your workplace.